Imagine having only enough food for one final meal. Would you share it with a stranger? This incredible true story from the Bible shows us how one woman's extraordinary faith led to a miracle that saved 3 lives. During the reign of King Ahab in Israel, around 870 BC, a severe drought gripped the land. The prophet Elijah had declared there would be no rain except by his word, as God's judgment against the widespread worship of false gods. But even God's messenger needed sustenance during this challenging time. God directed Elijah to an unexpected place, Zarephath, a small town in Sidon, outside Israel's borders. This wasn't a random choice. God specifically chose a widow there, someone who seemed to have nothing to give. But as we'll see, she had something far more valuable than material wealth. When Elijah arrived at the town gate, he saw her gathering sticks. She wasn't collecting firewood for a feast, but for what she believed would be her last meal. The prophet called out to her, "Would you bring me a little water in a jar so I may have a drink?" As she went to get it, he added another request, "Please bring me a piece of bread." Her response reveals the depths of her poverty. "As surely as the Lord your God lives, I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." This is where the story takes an extraordinary turn. Instead of seeking help elsewhere, Elijah makes what seems like an impossible demand. "Don't be afraid, go home and do as you have said. But first, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son." Then comes the promise that would test her faith. "For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the day the Lord sends rain on the land." Picture yourself in her situation. You're down to your last ingredients, facing starvation with your child. A foreign prophet asks you to give him your final meal, promising supernatural provision in return. What would you do? This widow chose faith over fear. She went home and did exactly as Elijah asked. What happened next was nothing short of miraculous. Day after day, meal after meal, the flour jar never emptied, and the oil jug never ran dry. This wasn't a one-time miracle, but a continuous provision that sustained not just the prophet, but the widow and her son throughout the drought. But the story doesn't end there. Sometime later, the widow's son became ill and stopped breathing. In her grief, she questioned Elijah, wondering if his presence had brought God's attention to her sins. Elijah took the boy upstairs, cried out to God, and stretched himself over the child 3 times. God heard his prayer, and the boy's life returned to him. This remarkable account teaches us profound lessons about faith, generosity, and God's provision. The widow gave everything she had, trusting in a promise from a God she barely knew. She was chosen not because of her abundance, but because of her willingness to trust and obey. Her story reminds us that sometimes our greatest demonstrations of faith come when we have the least to give. In a world where we often seek security in our possessions, the widow of Zarephath shows us that true security comes from trusting God's promises. Her jar of flour and jug of oil became symbols of God's faithful provision, proving that when we step out in faith, God can multiply our smallest offerings into abundant blessings.